In spite of all, we call this Friday good. Those were the words of T.S. Eliot. And so here today, on this strange and special day, nonetheless, we still call it good. And down the centuries, more than Christ's teaching, more than his miracles, it's the cross that has spoken to people and has drawn people. You might say in the slogan of the now defunct newspaper, all human life is here. Jesus said, when I am lifted up, will draw all people to myself. What we have in the crucifixion, in the cross of Christ, is a window into what is always true about God and what is always true about us when we reject God. A window to an event in one time and place. Focus down that one time and place. What theologians like to call the scandal of particularity. One time and place. Focusing what is true for every time and every place. How do we approach this? T.S. Eliot, again, in Little Gidding, one of his 4 quartets, thinking of the holiness of the place, the feel of holiness, said, you're not here to verify, instruct yourself, or inform curiosity, or carry report. You are here to kneel. That is our mental posture today. And so Jesus is condemned and led out on the way to Calvary. Imagine him going through those narrow streets, uneven, slippery, the shops on either side, perhaps with shopkeepers looking out, adding the odd jeer. Most people not taking any particular notice. On the streets which were wider than they are these days. You go through Jerusalem now, look into the shops either side and look to the walls at the back, and you've got an idea of the width of the Roman streets. And they were 6 foot lower than they are now. And jostling with the mules, going on laden with their burden, the shouts of the people, the shoves, the jeers, the buying and selling going on, apathy and ignorance about what was really happening. And so out through the wall to that little hillock shaped like a man's head stripped bare. To a place with tombs, the rubbish flying around, and the goats which will eat just about anything, and the donkeys, had their wonder already got their crosses? And people came to stare at ghoulishness in human nature. And the soldiers hardened to this sort of thing, but perhaps a bit uneasy, distancing themselves by just doing their duty and making sport. And so Jesus was nailed to the cross. with hammer and nails, the carpenter's tools, the irony of it, and a voice, not the usual one of cursing and screaming as the nails are driven in, but Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Father, forgive. They know not what they do. Love to the uttermost. Unbroken, not even by the nails. Refusing to strike back. The way of force was not the way of God, who is the God of love. Not the way of the Son of the Father. Father, forgive. Rendering the evil powerless. Refusing to strike back, not passing the evil on. Breaking the chain, as that little notice on President Harry Truman's desk used to say, the buck stops here. Like a sponge or a blotter, soaking up the liquid so as not to contaminate further. So, soaking up the evil, refusing to pass it on. That impressive power of forgiveness. We've glimpsed it sometimes in those who have lost children. Don't let us be glib and easy about it. Forgive and forget is often said. That doesn't work. You won't forget. If you've lost a leg through somebody's careless driving, are you ever going to forget? There are other things, mental things, which will always be there. And yet, forgive. For forgiveness can transform the memory. It may take time. There's not an easy, quick fix. But by the grace of God, it's possible. Reconciliation. Here we see love in action and the fruit of love. As John of the Cross said, put love where there is no love, and you will gather love. O love of God, O sin of man, in this dread act your strength is tried. The victory remains with love, and he, our love, is crucified. Gentle Christ, wise and good, we nailed him to a cross of wood. The Son of God, he came to save in borrowed stable and borrowed grave. Soldiers came at Pilate's call, led him up into the common hall, took sharp thorns and made a crown, dressed him in a scarlet gown. They spat at him and mocked him then, lashed his back again and again, laid the cross upon that back, forced him up the narrow track. He stumbled through the city gate, became too weak to lift the weight, A man who passed him, black it said, carried up his cross instead. At last they came to the hanging place, the hill we call the eyeless face. They gave him drugs to kill the pain. He pushed the cup away again. The soldiers hung him on the cross, played for his clothes at pitch and toss. When each of them had won a share, sitting down, they watched him there. The death that he died, we were in it too, with the crowd or the soldiers or the high priest's crew. We couldn't quite see where the cross came in, with the life that would lead away from sin. Gentle Christ, wise and good, we nailed him to a cross of wood. The Son of God, he lived to save, in borrowed stable and borrowed grave. Luke in his gospel tells of a strange darkness. To interpret that darkness, perhaps we need just to take a glance to the Gospel of Mark or Matthew, where they speak of a voice coming out of that darkness. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Strange voice, and yet a very authentic voice. How are we to understand that seemingly disturbing cry, given it came from that person? Jesus always called God Father, Abba, the familiar Aramaic word. Father. Here, it's my God. That says something of the starkness of it. My God. How are we to enter into something of what that great cry, the cry of dereliction, it's been called? How enter into what it means, get the feeling of it? Not easy. Richard Holloway tried to give some idea of it by telling about a story from a friend who worked in a mental hospital. There was a little girl there who did nothing but cry. She never spoke to anyone. She simply sat and cried. Finally, a brilliant and patient therapist discovered her story. She had lived alone with her mother, and one night, in the middle of the night, her mother gave birth to a baby whom she promptly smothered. Then she wrapped the baby in an old bedcloth and gave it to this child who was then 10 years old, and told her to take the baby to an abandoned building opposite and leave it there. The little girl obeyed, numb with horror. She was found hours later, walking through the streets of the city with tears streaming down her face. The police found her, but she never spoke another word until the therapist managed to piece together the hideous reality of what she had experienced. And what came out was a sense of forsakenness. This mother, whom she had loved, had gone into a place she did not understand. She had done hideous things and used her as an accomplice. So she felt forsaken by all she'd ever loved. So cry, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Which comes out of the human condition. Why, Lord? Why me? Why did she have to die? Prayer of protest, a prayer of puzzlement. Some ways, one of the most authentic prayers that a Christian can ever pray. It has been said that because Jesus prayed that, gave that cry, that prayer of protest, we cannot. But surely, because he has, we can. In that utter lostness, still, my God. Prayer of faith, agonized, torn, hanging in by the fingertips. I have said once or twice, I think that might be my favorite verse in the whole Bible. It touches the depths of human need. I remember a student years ago, married, wife suffered a breakdown, new baby born with hole in the heart, very little food. And he was at the end of his tether. And he went out, and he stood on the bridge, looking down into the water. And a fellow student by chance, or was it chance, came by that way. He didn't stop. But as he went by, he just said, Christ has been there before. Christ has been there before. That young man turned around. He went back home. His wife eventually recovered. The baby had a successful operation. And he became a faithful priest in Christ's church. Because Jesus prayed it. No matter how black life may be, he has been there. And when human hearts are breaking under sorrow's iron rod, then they find that self-same aching deep within the heart of God. It's nearly over now. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. The cry of a son coming home. Word learned at his mother's knee. And so he died. A chain of relationship unbroken. But they were words of faith, not of certainty. It's part of the strange wonder of the cross. He shouldered the cross, trusting, hoping for vindication, and hoping, trusting he died. We see the crucifixion now through the lens of Easter. But he could not have known, or the sacrifice would have been cheapened. We walk by faith, not by sight, not by knowledge. Perhaps we've sometimes sung, he lives within my heart. Yes, yet in a strange paradox, we go forward in faith. Like Jesus before Easter, so he is able to save to the uttermost those who trust. We experience little Easters, like Jesus experienced the Transfiguration. But we do not yet know as we are known. The way to the garden of Easter Day was over the hill. So it means not seeking the easy way. An Irish poet wrote that there are two kinds of people in this world, the pure and the responsible. We are called to be the responsible. Out there in the struggles, walking the tightrope of misunderstanding, metaphorically getting mud on our shoes, maybe literally. Staying in the real world, not one of our making. Staying in the struggles of the cross as the only way. I may have told you before of the cross on the roof of the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Abu Dhabi. It was a time when relationships between Christians and Muslims were getting more difficult. And the Italian bishop thought it might be politic, diplomatic, to take the cross down. And it was the Syrian and the Lebanese and the Palestinian members of his flock who came to him and said, "Bishop, you take down that cross over our dead bodies." Our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers gave their lives for what that cross stands for. Don't you dare take it down. Living in the real world, with the struggles of the cross. So we go on in faith and love, believing with that belief that is a kind of knowing that when we are at the end of our tether, we're never beyond his mercy. In faith and love, and in that strange paradox again, our little flickering love reaches out to grasp that love that will not let us go. O love of God, O sin of man, in this dread act your strength is tried. The victory remains with love, and he, our love, is crucified. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit.